Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we have the latest from the live radar. Run for the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as we are going to continue to see fairly warm conditions throughout this weekend and into the start of next week, but we will be stuck with this stubborn easterly breeze that will take the edge off it, especially further eastwards where temperatures may still remain in the high teens or even mid-teens at times. It will depend on the amount of cloud that we will see dragging in off the North Sea. That will be very variable. Some days not much at all, other days lots of thick cloud and even bits and bobs of drizzle. So although really not much going on at the synoptic pattern, really nothing changing in terms of the pressures, we are going to see some variable conditions at the surface, but still generally not too bad for this time of year. But progressively, though, we are expecting later on next week things to turn much more unsettled as eventually these high-pressure systems break down or at least move away. We have got a strong signal for lower pressure to properly return for the final week or so of May. We are expecting to see rain, potentially wind, and generally more widespread variable temperatures as we do see more of a classic westerly returning to end spring. So do remember, if you enjoy the videos, which you like and subscribe. Now, once again, we start on the live radar and not much is going on. I've said this numerous times over the past few weeks. We had a few odd thunderstorms at the start of the week, but generally speaking, we've seen very little in the way of precipitation for a while now. So yeah, this point of the video really has been fairly redundant recently. Temperatures, I'll recording this a bit later on around 9:30, but you can see that east-west split very apparent here. I've been banging on about it over the last few days, but this just exemplifies what I've been talking about pretty much along the sort of boundary of the Peak District down through the Midlands, central southern England, just about getting towards London. That's where we've got this boundary between cooler air and that easterly flow further westwards, not getting affected by it too much, and temperatures a little bit warmer. Very apparent here across the far northeast of England, where you go into the Lake District and it's actually pretty quite mild, but you go across to Newcastle and it's pretty cold indeed. So big east-west split, and this is going to remain over the coming days. Now, if you go over to the latest UKV, you can see why we got that east-west split, with a bit of thicker cloud getting dragged in off the North Sea for this evening. And where that is prevalent, those temperatures are a bit cooler. Now, it will clear westwards, but will break apart as it does. And you see for Saturday, it's a sunny day. It's one of the days where we are going to be pretty nice, cosy and warm, and with not much cloud around at all. But as we head into Sunday, another layer of cloud builds in and it will dominate the morning, eventually clearing off. And then again for the evening, a thicker batch of cloud moving overnight. And through Monday, again, perhaps a bit more in the way of thicker cloud there further northwards. And as we head towards Tuesday, another spell of thicker cloud, but across central and southern areas there. So as I said, lots of variable cloud, bits and bobs of rain here potentially on Tuesday, but generally conditions are not too bad for the next 5 days. Look at the temperatures this afternoon, generally low 20s in the west, high teens further eastwards, and that will continue into the weekend. As we do see it warming up a little bit in the east, more around the 19 to 21 degree range for most here. And as we head into Sunday, it's a similar story again, high teens further eastwards, maybe still at 20 degrees here or there, and then 22, 23 perhaps at best in the west. Monday, similar again, and finally Tuesday is pretty similar, but as we saw, a bit more in the way of cloud and bits and bobs of rain there for Tuesday, so you can see much more in the way of cooler conditions, especially around London here, where that cloud really does coincide with the peak of the afternoon. So that could change, all depending on the positioning of those thicker clouds, but at this stage, this latest UKV has that arriving around the middle of the afternoon. So I'll have to keep a close eye on that, but wherever that thicker cloud does prevail, it will inevitably be slightly cooler. Now, if you head over to the latest GFS now, you can see high pressure still in control, but with this easterly flow. Eventually, though, later on next week, the high pressure breaks down and we do start to see low pressure starting to dominate. Look at this, a strong westerly flow and lots of greens here indicating lower pressure, jet stream diving to our south. So not only is it unsettled, but we're on the cool side of the jet stream, which means that we're in colder conditions. See these blues at the potential equivalent temperature, and generally speaking, if we look at the temperature deviation, we're in the blues as well. So not only turning more unsettled to start June here, but also turning colder as well. And also accumulated precipitation really high there as well to end May and start June. Most of this accumulating in that final 7 days or so. Now, if you compare to the GM, broadly, again, very similar. High pressure in control, eventually low pressure taking over later on next week. Perhaps takes a little bit longer for all those greens to push in, but eventually you can see it here with a strong westerly flow with increased precipitation amounts coming in off the west, walls of rain potentially developing there to end May. And finally, if we compare to the latest ECMWF, again, high pressure in control, but eventually low pressure replaces it, and very similar to the other runs. Eventually, greens coming in off the Atlantic, so cooler air, and potentially heavy rain as well, and accumulated precipitation starting to build up. So yes, longer term now, a strong signal for that cooler, unsettled conditions to arrive there. And we can see it agrees with the latest ensembles. Generally speaking, we're hovering in and around average for the foreseeable future, a little bit more in the way of above in the near future, longer term, a little bit more in the way of below average temperatures with those northwesterly winds. And you can see precipitation does pick up as well. We're expecting the rain to be heaviest in the north and west, typically with a westerly flow. So these precipitation spikes for London, which of course are going to be a bit less than what we're going to see in those western regions. So always do have to think about that. But you can see, generally speaking, the rain looks like it's going to make a real re-emergence there in around 6, maybe 7 days' time. So coming late next working week, that's when we're expecting to return. And you can see it coincides with the pressure starting to really drop here from the majority of ensemble members. And the 2 meter temperatures are going to be very up and down as well, but generally dropping in that longer term. And finally, if we compare to the latest ECMWF, the midday run, it's only just coming out. If we look at the midnight run, very, very similar. Generally, temperatures hovering around average for the foreseeable future, but precipitation really starting to pick up later on next week. Again, they're still subject to change. Things could still get moved around, adapted. But at the moment, that's what we're thinking. Lower pressure, unsettled conditions to break a real proper breakthrough once again later on next working week into the weekend, bringing us back towards something that we thought we got away from. We thought we got towards summer conditions, but unfortunately we're always going to see this as a return, and that's what we're going to see later on next week. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.